I'd like to welcome all of you to another evening of Food Literacy for All. This evening we have a wonderful panel of local farmers, and we'll get to them in just a couple of moments. I have just a couple of announcements before we get started. For those of you who are students, just wanted to remind you that we uploaded a new version of the course schedule that has a revision to the sequence of speakers toward the end of the semester, and also has added a couple of new reading assignments that start to become relevant for as early as next week for our next speaker, Winona LaDuke. So please take a look at that updated schedule if you haven't already. One brief public service announcement here. The UMSFP, the U of M Sustainable Food Program, a student-run organization, is hosting a series of films about the food system, and the first one takes place tomorrow. And so if you're interested, here is the information: free admission, 1040 Dana. They look like a really interesting series of films. Now, before we start with our panel for this evening, 4 iClicker questions. So if you don't have your iClicker out, for those of you who are students, please get those, and we'll start with those questions right away, just to give us a little bit of background information that's relevant to our panel. Okay, and like last week, when we start with each question, you'll have a full minute to decide on what answer you want to submit, but I want you to talk to your neighbor about what you think the correct answer is. So you ready? Okay. How many farms are there in Michigan today? Okay. Chat among yourselves and decide which of these is the right answer. How many got the right answer? All right, 52,000. How many thought it was less? How many thought it was more? About yeah, 52,000. We're actually oh great, the class did really well on this. We're a surprisingly agricultural state. Okay. Which of the following, now farms come in different sizes, and these are data that the USDA gathers for all states, and so these are some of the size categories that for all over the country, but in Michigan, which of these size categories has the largest number of farms in it compared to the others? Is it this smallest size, this small to medium, or large to very large? Which category? Okay, go. Talk among yourselves and then submit an answer.
Let's see. All those people doing hay.
I think we're ready to go. Okay. How many of you got the right answer? Oh, sorry. B is the right. Okay, most of you, more than half of you got the right answer. And even though we hear a lot about large farms being part of the industrial food system, and of course that's true, and by area there are a huge amount, most of the world's food, including much of the food in Michigan, is grown on fairly small farms, family scale, small farms. Great, okay, next question. What percent of principal farm operators were female in 2012, which is probably pretty close to today? Okay, go. How many of you got this right? Hey, very good. The largest, the greatest number of answers was the right one. Excellent, 14%. Okay, final question. What percent of principal farm operators were black in the 2012 census of agriculture? For Michigan. Okay. Okay, make sure you have your answer recorded.
5%.
Okay, now this was one where most everybody didn't get the right answer. In Michigan, less than 1%. Yeah. So pretty stark data. Thank you for your responses. I'm now going to turn the evening over to Malik Yakini and to introduce our panel.
Good evening. How's everyone doing? So this year we decided to change up things a little bit. Instead of having a lecture each week, we thought it would be a nice change of pace to hear from a panel periodically. So about once a month, we'll be doing this new format. And so I'm really happy to have these farmers here with us today. They're all in the Southeast Michigan area, either representing Detroit, Ypsilanti, or the space between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. Small farmers are really important, and there's been lots of reports that have come out in recent years that the way to feed the burgeoning human population sustainably is not by more large-scale farms, but by creating more small farms. So these farms are really important. So we're really privileged to have these farmers with us tonight. So I'm going to introduce them in the order they're going to present, which is not exactly the order they're sitting in. We're going to first hear from Stefanie Stauffer, who's with Nightshade Farms. We're then going to hear from Olivia Hubert and Greg Willerer, who are representing Brother Nature Farms in Detroit. And then we're going to hear from my good friend and brother, Melvin Parson, with the We the People Growers Association based in Ypsilanti. So what they're going to do is they'll each have about 5 to 7 minutes to give you an overview of their project. And then I have a few questions for them, and then we're going to open it up so that you can ask them questions as well. Stefanie?
All right, can you hear me? How about now? Mic check. All right, cool. All right, so hey everyone, how's everybody doing? Okay, how do we move this technology? Is it this one? I'm a farmer, obviously. So the way I wanted to approach this intro, I feel like visuals are helpful to kind of set the stage. And just tell me if I'm talking too loud. I don't know how close this mic is. But when I was thinking about this, they were saying bring some slides together. So I figured this would be a really great place for me to start. Because this slide, to me, has a big representation to sort of my path to agriculture. In the top left corner, this is my grandparents. This is a photograph at my great-grandfather's backyard farm in Western Massachusetts in about 1945, 46. And what's that plant behind their heads? I don't know if you could tell from here.
Tomatoes.
It's tomatoes. So unbeknownst to me, when I actually started my farm back in 2010, I didn't know this story. Although my mom grew up across the street from them, she had all these vivid memories, but it was something that for some reason, I was not told the story. So part of my own journey is not just about connecting with food, but also reconnecting with my own family history in this way. And again, he was known for his tomatoes. I had no idea that this would be me later. And then another photo over here. A lot of my inspiration comes from working with urban agriculture, both in Ypsilanti, and also this picture is from when I volunteered with the South Central Farmers. Sorry, it's just easier to use this way. And this was at their farmers market in Watts, which is a neighborhood in Los Angeles. And working with them was just an incredible inspiration. So when I was trying to figure out how to tell this story about what I'm doing, I figured I would start with inspirations, start with other places and other people that have maybe put me on this path to connect with food. And also not just with food, but with also food sovereignty and connecting it back to culturally relevant foods that brings us closer not just to each other, but to our own roots, to our own families in that way. So I got really inspired in about the year 2010 is when my farm started. And we're fully diversified, and when I say we, it's really just me. But it's a 2/3 of acre I did last year, and I did over 100 varieties of tomatoes, something like 90 varieties of peppers, all kinds of different produce, mostly heirloom and open pollinated. And it was my biggest year to date, and this was, that was my 8th season in business, so that was pretty exciting for me. And I can move on to the next one. And then these other ones are just pictures at the farmer's market. And then the other big piece of my story is the work I've been doing mentoring other beginning farmers. So for the last 3.5 years, I was a program manager at Tillian Farm Development Center. That's who these folks are in this corner over here. That was one of our cohorts. And this is that same farm site. In there I was giving advice to beginning farmers. I went from being a backyard farmer to this. But that's something I'm also really proud of. I was able to mentor at least 18 farmers coming in this as beginning farmers, trying to grow their businesses, and then move on into the
Is that a Miracle Grow cabbage?
No, it's just got a lot of water last season. Yeah, that's a special, it's basically, you can't really see, but it's a purple Savoy. It's an Italian heirloom variety. But yeah, it's a freakishly large, is why that picture is taken. But yeah, so those are other things that were really inspirational to me. I should also say I'm a professor of sociology at Washtenaw. I know some of my students are actually here, so thanks guys for coming. And more, my goal is to sort of connect my own personal story and my own farming story into conversations about food sovereignty and trying to do that to bring about more equity, not just in the food system, but more generally through that work as well. So I will leave you with my last picture. So really recently, I've been getting into not just the heirloom varieties, but also the slow food architace varieties and varieties that have a history that doesn't come just from deliciousness, but also comes from a history of resilience. And I think that's a really important part of the story that heirlooms and other varieties can tell us, because it's not just about, you know, the environmental impact or the biodiversity, but it's also about the cultural diversity that these things are connected to. So that's my focus going forward. And yeah, come on down, come visit me at the Ypsi Farmers Market.
All right, thank you. So we're going to hear, we had a little discussion before about whether we should put Greg or Olivia's name. And so being a male against patriarchy, I decided we probably would be safer to have Olivia go first. So.
Go ahead.
Hello. I'm Olivia, the other half of, well, third now, I guess, of Brother Nature Produce. We're in Detroit. We're in North Corktown. We're on about 1 acre, and we specialize in salad mix and herbs. So we make most of our money at the Eastern Market, and we sell at some other farmers markets in the neighborhood. We also sell to restaurants and mentor other farmers and lots of other stuff. Me personally, don't get mad, Michigan State University graduate. So Bachelor of Science in Horticulture, and then I wanted to specialize in ornamental horticulture, so I did the Royal Horticulture Society program for a year over in England and learned lots of stuff and met the Queen's gardeners, and they're stuck up, but anyway. Met the Queen's gardeners, and then when I came back to Detroit in 2008, couldn't find a job, but I had always wanted to have my own farm, but I thought, oh yeah, you know, you graduate and you work somewhere for a couple years and you save up money and you like, you know, drink, you know, expensive, unusual drinks and like leisure, single, whatever, but that never quite happened.
Because instead she met a fool with a farm and straightened him out.
Yeah, we met at the Eastern Market. Mm-hmm.
And so by that time, I had been market gardening and, as she likes to say, just throwing seeds in the air. Not really doing it systematically. But I had a good product that people really wanted, you know, because it wasn't anything between like romaine and iceberg and all that in the early 2000s. So a lot of times you were lucky if you found arugula at the market. And so no one was doing anything with you know, Asian greens and French stuff and interesting things that are not lettuces. And so by working together, we've perfected a better mix and a better systematic way of growing the mix. And then fast forward, after years of battling with the city of Detroit, we just, you know, we still farm an acre in the city, but we bought land in Riley, Michigan, which is sort of maybe about 15 minutes on the way to Port Huron. So we have a rural farm, and similar to what Will Allen has done in Milwaukee, he has probably like a 90-acre farm outside the city where they do like large-scale things that they can't do in the city. And then they have the 3.5-acre urban farm, and so that was...
They had a 3.5. Growing power is no more.
That's right. Okay, yeah. Anyway, but it was a big inspiration to me to be able to say, yeah, we can do both. And so we're doing a lot of stuff in the city, and then we have time, maybe once or twice a week, where we go out to 7 acres, which seems like not a lot, but it's a lot, especially if you just have this, small tractor and hand tools. It's more than enough work for both of us. So.
All right, thank you. Clap it up for Olivia and Greg.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we're going to hear from Melvin Parson from We the People Growers Association.
Hello, everyone. I'm Melvin Parson, the owner, founder of a farming initiative called We the People Growers Association. And I've just got to say this to make me feel better, that I'm extremely nervous right now. So that helps me kind of break that nervousness up. Also need to start off by saying I spent 13 years of my life incarcerated. I spent about that same time battling substance abuse and alcoholism. I've been homeless several times. Thank you. I've been homeless several times, and I say this when I end up in front of people. That is that I don't know how I got here, right? Other than folks not giving up on me, and with a whole lot of help and support from numerous individuals and organizations. And I really don't know how I became a farmer either. What happened was, and some of you know my story, in 2013 I was living in a organization's, one of their housing units here in Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, called Avalon Housing. And they've got an edible garden program, and people who live there can, if they want to choose to do so, they can be provided some seedlings and they can grow some food and things like that. And it's a wonderful organization, wonderful program. I lived there for 4 years and never thought, not one time did I want to be part of that. And in 2013, this prolific gardener named Werner, who got around in a mobilized wheelchair, passed away. She also lived there. And in that following spring, I inherited her vegetable bed, probably about double the width of this table and about the same length, maybe a couple feet longer. And as some of you know, I didn't ask for that damn vegetable bed. It just, it landed in my lap. And, and I'm kind of guided by this universal thing and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, well, I'm just gonna roll with this and see how it plays itself out. And so I was given some seedlings, some transplants, and I grew some things. And it made me interested in where my food came from. And I also saw a documentary called Food Inc. Has anybody seen that? Yeah, I saw that documentary and I was like, holy shit. And I turned 50 that year. And so I had this midlife crisis thing going on, but I didn't have any money, so I couldn't buy a Corvette. So I thought that I would maybe look at changing how I ate food. And so I would go down to the farmer's market in Carytown in Ann Arbor, here in Ann Arbor. Anybody been to the farmer's market? It's a really nice farmer's market, very lively, full of energy, enthusiasm, and really good food there. And I'm down there for an hour trying to figure out what a radish was, or what a squash was, or what a beet was. And in that time that I was down there, I saw nobody that looked like me. And then I looked around at the people selling me my food, and they didn't look like me either. And I'm a firm believer that either you've got a seat at the table or your ass is on the menu. And it was in that moment, it felt like the universe said to me, Melvin, this is where I want you to sit at. And ever since then, it feels like the universe has been conspiring not only to make sure that I have a seat at the table, but that I'm relevant at the table and that I've got a voice at the table. So fast forward a couple of years, I went from that 3x9 foot raised vegetable bed to starting a couple of community gardens, one on the south side of Ypsilanti called Park Ridge Gardens, and it's still going on. And so throughout these last several years, this thing has kind of morphed on me. I started We the People Growers Association in 2015 with the sole purpose of raising a few dollars, because I wanted to create these community garden spaces where people who normally wouldn't say hello to each other in the course of a day could come together and grow some food together and share some dialogue with each other and share some laughter and some tears and whatever, just as an effort to build some community. That's what it was all about. And then this past year in 2017, it kind of morphed on me again, and I had an opportunity to lease about a 1/4 acre of land from a church in Ypsilanti Township called Grace Fellowship Church House of Solutions. And in that space, with the help of over 150 volunteers, I had a lot of people come out there, I was able to grow some amazing organic produce that wound up in 13 restaurants in Ann Arbor and 3 restaurants in Ypsilanti. And from that, I was able to hire 1 returning citizen part-time, but that's my goal, right? I want to build a sustainable farming system that can support a workforce of about 10 to 15 men and women returning home from incarceration. And in that goal, I envision building a world-class urban farm where people from all over the world will come see it. And I think what will make it a world-class urban farm is its intention and dedication and focus on changing the soil in people's lives. Because that's the thing I learned most about farming this year, is that it's all about the soil. Your soil is everything. You can be a below average farmer like me, but if your soil is good, chances are your plants will flourish. And subsequently, you can be a brilliant farmer, and if your soil's not good, chances are they won't flourish. Well, I'm a recent graduate of Eastern Michigan University School of Social Work program. I did that in 2016. So there's this correlation that I latched on to, is that the same thing applies with human beings, right? It's all about your soil, right? If your soil's good, chances are you'll flourish. And so that's what our dedication and focus moving forward will be for We the People Growers Association, to help people change their soil. That's all.
Thank you. So the next question I was going to ask the panelists is, what are your greatest successes? But I think I'm going to ask that next and ask instead, what are your greatest challenges? And I want all the panelists to respond to that.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Our greatest challenge has been acquiring land, really. And in the city, we still don't own the land that we're farming. The city has set up this pseudo-government land bank thing where the city has so much land, so they just turn it over to, I don't even know if they're not-for-profit anyway. There's been lots of people in charge of the land bank over the years. I think they've only been around for a couple of years, but they've had 4 different CEOs, and supposedly they're under federal investigation, but you never hear anything about that. Anyway, long story short, the land is kind of locked up, kind of frozen, hard to get to, and the city can't decide how much the land is worth. So, I think that's been our biggest struggle.
Oh, okay, that's it? So land has been the biggest struggle. Greg, go ahead.
I think as a person that is in the middle of the farmer's market, land for sure, but one of the other challenges we face is to try to get the average American to eat healthy. Just look at what we eat, myself included. Like, sometimes we're busy, and I don't go eating Pop-Tarts or anything like that, but sometimes, the day slips by you and you're hungry, and then, you go to a pub or something and you just order crap. And then we're at the market, and most people at the Eastern market are just walking through as tourists, and the other half of them might be looking for something special, might try our stuff, but for the most part, eating salad isn't something Americans do every day, maybe once a week if you're lucky. And so trying to get people to actually eat healthy, not to mention eat organic and local, it's like pulling teeth. And so if we can do more of that, and if, not just the people in this room, but if people in this region can do more of that, I mean, what will happen with a lot of our farms and a lot of our food businesses and farmers will probably parallel what's been happening with the beer industry, which is, taking on the corporate levels of the beer industry, and the food industry is so, it's like beyond evil what's going on. It's like they make it look healthy, but it's just the opposite. And so like we need to have some sort of control over the food we eat. And to get there, yeah, there are a lot of farmers, but there's a lot of farmers just like when I was a teacher. There's a lot of people that they try it and then they just get out of it. And so there needs to be more of a demand from the top economically to help a lot of these farmers to be successful. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, for sure, the people in this room and then the people we know, we definitely need to infectiously try to get more people to support more local farms. Like before we came here, we didn't know we were invited to go to dinner, but we wanted specifically to go to the Argus farm stand over there because we wanted to put our money there. We wanted to also get inspiration from that because a lot of the stuff that we do is very similar, and where we're going, hopefully, is very similar to that. So I just think we're on the verge of something big, but we need your help.
So before we go to the next panelist, can we go back to the land question? In maybe 2 or 3 minutes, can you kind of explain to us your land journey? What does that look like? Did you start on?
Okay, so it started with Greg owning a house on Rosa Parks, and then the garden expanded from his backyard to the other side of the alley. And this is one of those strange...
When you say it expanded, does that mean he bought the property?
Oh, no, he just talked to the neighbors and asked them if they would mind if he could put a garden
Did they
out
own it?
there. No, I mean, there's only what, four families on the block because there's only 6 houses on the block. So then it's like at the end of the block, the grandparents will own a 2-family flat, and then they'll buy the 2-family flat next to them. And so then their kids live on the other side, and then their grandkids live in the other one. So it ends up being probably, we have the same amount of neighbors in the country as we do in the city. So, and we see all of our neighbors every day at different times. It's like clockwork. You can tell what time of day it is by what the neighbors are doing, which is good for security and things like that. So most of the block is empty. And then once he left the backyard and went to the other side of the alley, after doing soil tests and stuff, then the farm starts kind of gerrymandering up the rest of the block, and now we have like half of one side of the block, and then the other half is some random lots in between the few houses that are there.
So I want to be clear, when you say you have it, what does that mean exactly?
We are farming it with the permission of the neighbors that we bribe regularly with farm products so that they don't complain.
But I mean, we also have a long sort of history and paper trail, like before the land bank was ever a thought. I had been going down since 2008 to what was the real estate department. You could buy a side lot, and a lot of people in Detroit are successful to buy their side lot, but I would submit paperwork to buy the lots where most of the farm production was going on, which is not near or next to anyone's house. So you would think it wouldn't be a problem for us to buy a lot that's just sitting there, that, by the way, we took tons of trees down that we would cut and maintain and do all kinds of things. And then the next year, I go back to check on, like, hey, I haven't heard back from you, government, what's going on? And see Edith Floyd in there, and we all kind of put our heads together. Edith Floyd's another gardener, and she was trying to buy like 12 lots or something. She's ambitious, but they were just basically, we learned by the 3rd year that they were just throwing our paperwork out at city council. So the real estate department took it to another department, and they see that we're agricultural, so they just basically threw it out. And so the land bank, eventually, after some meetings and just way too many hoops to go through, we had a meeting. They came over, some people from the Land Bank and Planning Department, and then they gave us an offer for 2 of the lots that aren't even lots we're growing on. One was like $7,000 and one was $20,000. So like, okay, thanks. You know, so at least now like they're changing their game a little bit, but we're working with the Corktown Business Association, our neighborhood association, and we get a little bit of coaching here and there. We're going to submit a plan for 9 of these city-owned lots, and hopefully we'll get it at a market value. So that's kind of where we're at, and hopefully something will happen in the next year.
Okay, thank you. Stefanie, what's your greatest challenge?
I mean, I was going to echo that access to land as well. It's a little bit different here in Washtenaw County. Some of you may or may not know that the farmland is incredibly expensive here, and one of the biggest issues we had in terms of Tillian Farm Development Center and recruiting people was convincing people to come here when we couldn't guarantee that they could afford to live here. And that's not even getting into buying land. So there's a really big issue right now in Washtenaw, at least for me and other people I know, in access to land. And I know that's something that's also being impacted by a lot of subdivisions going in. I know we do have a Greenbelt program here in Ann Arbor, which is helping, but I feel like we can't protect the land as fast as it's going into development as well. So there's also just less land to be had. So that's a really big issue for me. And I know you want to talk about that too, but maybe I'll just jump in with my last challenge. One of my other biggest challenges is really similar to what Greg was talking about at the farmer's market and issues of compensation. And I don't think it's necessarily just about healthy food in my experience. It's also that it's really hard to get customers to pay what it is worth. Right, and partly is that because obviously the whole system that's industrial is based on exploitation and is based on not paying people wages that are anywhere near livable. So, and I feel like for us as organic farmers, we really feel the squeeze of that because people are bringing their grocery store mentality to the farmer's market and trying to say, you know, why are you charging X, Y, or Z price when I can go over here and get it wholesale for a fraction of that? And yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. We understand that people do have constraints as well in their income, but where's the balance, right? We need to be able to have people have access to healthy food while also supporting the farms. And that, again, is also tied to how farm labor is not really valued in general, culturally speaking. And I think that's a big issue. And then the last challenge for me is I also have a value-added hot sauce business attached to my farm. So with that, there's a lot of extra licensing and food safety difficulties that have been a really big challenge for me and are going to just get worse with the Food Safety Modernization Act. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Melvin, what's your greatest challenge?
There's several, and they span over the last few years. And one has been land access and not being able to control my future, you know, or the future of We the People Growers Association. So being at the whim of other entities or businesses as I either lease land or was given land early on. I was part of a cooperative and that didn't work out and so I had to leave that and I leased some land, like I say, last year, and there were some challenges in that, but we were able to work through that. Kind of like, and to echo a little bit of what Stefanie said, is being able to, I mean, here being in Washtenaw County, based on the business model that I want to pursue, being like from farm to table, actually being able to sell from the farm to restaurants. It's kind of like being able to educate restaurants, you know, that the value of this product, you know, it's because it's easy for a restaurant to be able to get a case of kale from somewhere in California that their price point turns out to be like $1 a bunch. And how do I convince them and about the benefits of buying local and buying from someone like me, where I can't sell at that price point. My price point may end up being $3 a bunch. And so to be able to educate and speak to the value of that and get local restaurants and things like that to buy in is a challenge. Also, I got to say this, and this is a high-class challenge for me, and that is, I've got this Ferrari, I've got this Ferrari, which is We the People Growers Association. Right now, I'm currently in the process of negotiating with the Ypsilanti Community School Board to take possession of an elementary school that's been closed in Ypsilanti Township since 2010. And I want to buy that building and the land around it. It's about 10 acres. About 5 acres of it's farmable, and there's a 22,000 square foot building that used to be an elementary school. And that's where I'm going to build this world-class urban farm. But the challenge in this high-class challenge is that I've got this Ferrari, and I know it's a Ferrari, and I say that with a lot of humility, because I don't know what I'm doing. And my problem is that the Ferrari is unassembled, right? It's unassembled, right? And so I need a lot of help, and I get a lot of help, with trying to assemble this thing, and once it gets assembled, and as it's being assembled, I've been able to do some things like, so one of my challenges is that, I care about my community a lot. I care about all of humanity, but I'm especially fond of people who look like me, because I understand those challenges and those barriers and those obstacles and those built-in systemic walls that intentionally exclude us from participating in a very meaningful and impactful way that brings about a thriving family and brings about a thriving community. I'll give you one example. I was out at my farm last year, and there was a couple of kids who would come visit my farm, and they lived just on the other side of the fence of where my farm was, and I call them the future farmers. And one's 12 and one's 14, and they will come over there, and they actually planted their first vegetables over there where my farm was. And so the third time that they came over there, one of the kids says to me, "Hey, Farmer Parson, you ever been to jail before?" Right? And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have like a meaningful conversation here. And so I said, well, why do you ask if I've been to jail before? And he says, well, because everybody I know has been to jail, right? This kid's 12 years old, right? And every adult, or probably people a little bit older than him, that he knows been to jail, right? It's a sad commentary, but it's a very real commentary in a neighborhood that lacks resources and opportunity and is very low on hope, and has been that way for a generation or two, right? And so I said, well, yeah, I've been to jail before. And the other kid chimes in and he says, ooh, like, what did you go for, right? And on the surface, it looks like he's pretty excited about that. He wants to know, but I understand that deep down, it's not really about his enthusiasm or excitement about wanting to know what I've been to jail, but it's more about him trying to normalize this in his mind as this possibly being his experience in the not too distant future. So I say to the kid, it doesn't really matter what I'm going to jail for. What matters is that we figure out how to make sure you don't go, right? Mm-hmm. That's what matters. And what matters is that we figure out, given the resources that you got, or the lack of resources that you got, that you get an education so that you can graduate from high school, so that you can then go to college and maybe get a decent job and maybe be able to drive a decent car, or maybe able to eat some decent food or live somewhere where you want to live. And what matters is that you're respectful to you and your community. Those are the things that matters. And also what matters is when you see Farmer Parson over here, that you come over here and help him. Because that matters too.
Yeah.
So those things so that's a challenge to me, right? Like, how do I engage and maximize those opportunities and experiences to those kids, right? And how do I model and how do I create principles and values inside of We the People Growers Association that can have a greater impact on that community in large. So that's some of my challenge.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask 2 questions, and you can respond to whichever of the 2 you like. They're kind of related. Either what are your greatest successes, or what has you excited? What has you stoked right now about what's on the horizon?
Building an army.
No.
I say it like that, but it's true. Like part of our time in the spring before we get really busy is what I was just talking about her that we're going to do with you this spring, Bianca, and other people is we typically plow and till city lots for other market gardeners. We help a lot of our friends who are market gardening or becoming small scale farmers to be able to tackle 3 or 4 or 5, or in the case of Andy Che at Fisheye Farm, 8 more lots. So we have the old school 2-bottom plow and a 4-wheel drive New Holland, and we use that also to mix a lot of our compost up. So we make about 400 cubic yards of compost a year. But since we have that, we take a little bit of our time and we do a lot of these jobs either as a trade or as a favor, and sometimes we do certain jobs to get paid. And I'm not kidding, sometimes we get paid in ducks. That's happened before.
Yeah, we accept ducks.
But we need to scale up, and yet part of it is, like I was just saying, we need more consumers, but we also need a lot more people to be growing food, because at best we could probably only grow salad for 300 or 400 regular customers every week. And there's so much more demand for people at restaurants, for people at other markets, and we need an army to do that. We need a lot of people doing that in the city, and it's particularly interesting and exciting in the city because there's so many restaurants and so many menus that are changing to accommodate all the local things. And so at this time, anyone that wants to go into farming will have demand. I'm not saying they're necessarily going to be successful, but there's a lot of demand out there.
Yeah. I guess I'll jump in. He didn't mention is his obsession with the food trailer. He's got lots of chefs in his family, and so he's got the chef bug too, and so we want to get a trailer that we could pull with a pickup truck so that other people could borrow it too sometimes and sell salads to go, because it's hard to compete globally with the rest, compete globally selling whatever vegetables you're selling, because someone could always produce it cheaper than you can, and sometimes that's all people care about, but the value-added products really make the difference for a farm to cut out the middleman and be able to keep all the money for yourself.
And they make a difference to me as a consumer. If I am busy, I don't have to, I could find something like quick and easy and healthy to eat, whether it's a salad to go or some of the stuff that you're making, which is, I don't want to just eat a cucumber or a piece of kale or, I want to have something that's ready occasionally. Yeah, I do cook. I do love to cook. The family curse she's talking about exists, and so I do get that whole side of it. But sometimes farmers also need to be thinking like chefs and food producers.
Sure. Yeah, because there's a lot of people in Detroit, you'll see them out trying to live a healthier lifestyle, and there isn't a whole lot of support in the city. Everywhere you go, it's mostly Coney Islands or, get some pop, get some chips. And you see people it's almost like those movies where someone's out in the desert and they're like, oh, is that water? And they'll go up to a food stand and it's either not open or it's junk food. So this is a way. I'll be so excited when we finally have the trailer. I'm not looking forward to the buying the trailer and the fixing it up really, but I am looking forward to seeing people happy because, there's a healthy option on there, in the park or whatever.
Thank you. Stefanie, what has you stoked, or what have been your greatest successes?
Yeah, well, for me, it's 2 things. One of the successes I would say is my value-added side of my business, because I guess I glossed over this in my introduction. But Nightshade Farm, we're both a farm and also value-added salsa and hot sauce producer, and I make also items under the cottage food bill like chipotle and chili vinegar and all sorts of stuff, and I've been doing that for 8 years. So that was pretty cool that I've been able to keep going. But the thing I'm most excited about is seed, and also seed sovereignty, seed stewardship, and this thing I was talking about before, reconnecting people not just to themselves, but also to the food system through not just knowing the story about food, but also making sure that it stays available for family recipes, culturally specific stuff. And I'm really glad that I can actually sort of bridge the gap now between my sociology class and farming. I know my students in the room think I'm crazy because I brought a bunch of bean seeds into class last week. True story. But I think it's really important because once we can connect back to that story, it makes it much easier to connect back to what we have to do to make the system not just better and more sustainable, but also more equitable and more inclusive of everybody. So that's what I'm most excited about moving forward.
Thank you. Melvin?
Let me see. A couple things. I'm excited about the progress of We the People Growers Association, and the traction that it's gained, and the people that's been involved. It's, like I say, this last year we had over 150 volunteers come out there and just get their hands in the soil, and quite a few of those people I met for the first time. So having the ability to meet and connect with people and connect other people with other people, I get super stoked about that. And also the possibility of land ownership. I wouldn't have in a million years thought that I would be sitting at the table with a school system working out a purchase agreement for an elementary school, let alone be a farmer. And so I'm pretty stoked about that. And so the goal in all of that is to build a sustainable farming system that can support a workforce of 10 to 15 men and women returning home from prison. And I have no idea how I'm going to do that, right? But I'm pretty stoked about figuring it out and getting that thing dialed in, because I know it can happen. Because I know it can happen, but it doesn't happen just by Melvin the People Growers Association. It happens with a We the People Growers Association philosophy. So that's some of the things I'm excited about.
So in the next 10 minutes before we open it up to the participants in the audience, the next few questions, everyone doesn't have to respond to. If the question resonates with you, feel free to respond. So at D-Town Farm, the farm I work with, there's a tension between those of us who have an understanding that manual labor, for example, using broad forks is better for the soil than using petroleum-powered machinery. But the petroleum-powered machinery can get work done a lot faster, and there's, in American capitalism, there's a correlation between time and money. And so I'm wondering if any of you can speak to that tension that exists between using the most sustainable practices and using practices that perhaps are more, quote, efficient.
We got to go to counseling for this right here. There's the huge tension between.
Yeah, where I was, trained the classic British horticulture, like they have, after World War II, systems were created, like if you need to feed millions of people and you grow like this, you will be able to feed them, you will not starve. But that didn't involve very much machinery, and people, like to do stuff by hand. So I like to do stuff by hand, but growing the salad is really needy. It needs lots of stuff. It needs to be top dressed. It needs lots of compost. It needs, it can't have a lot of weed competition. So, and also it's hard to find people to work on the farm who want to bend down and harvest, or bend down and weed or squat, and even though we have our farm yoga that we do out there while we're harvesting, which actually has.
Yeah, it helps doing lunges sort of thing. Our massage therapist helped us with that. And so it's almost like I'm out there doing lunges. I'll take a knee and switch to the other knee as we go down the row, and it actually builds your back muscles a lot better. But that tension came to a head a few years ago between me just rototilling stuff and drying the soil out, and there was this hard pan on the bottom because I didn't have a broad fork to break that up. And when you rototill stuff, you just kill the biological life in there, and so eventually the soil dried out, and I'm out here like frustrated because the salad's not growing right, and she's like, I told you so. So what we came up with was our own system, because the tractor does make it more efficient, and I don't want to be selling our stuff for $7 a bag like in New York City. Stuff is just way too expensive. We try to keep our costs down. It's $5 for an 8-ounce bag at the market and $8 for a 1-pound bag at a restaurant. So it's efficiency. And so if we make a bunch of our own compost, we can sometimes occasionally go through and just rototill the top of the row, and then I take the loader and drop a bunch of compost on top of the row and we rake it flat. So it still has the biological life in there. And most of the time we'll just rip stuff out by hand or using a stirrup hoe. So we use the machine a little bit now. I think we found a good happy medium, but I'm most satisfied physically and mentally, spiritually, when I do stuff by hand. So it's just a matter of like using the machine carefully.
Yeah.
And then being strategic about everything. You got to be strategic about everything nowadays. So.
Yeah.
I'm definitely on more of the low-till side myself. And in the hoop house, I tried to do completely no-till, like what you were saying with the broad forks, because I just don't like what it does to the soil structure, like what you were saying, and also what you were talking about in terms of the soil life. But I know that's also not necessarily a popular thing, even around organic farmers here, because that means like you get more weeds. Sorry, it's not going to look as nice. But I am a firm believer that it means that you're going to have not just a healthier soil, but also healthier beneficial insect populations, which is going to stop your need to spray anything. So there's also that if you do more of a low-till, no-till approach. So I'm definitely on that side. And I just use the tractor to till, and that's all. Just once or twice per year.
Let me see. Okay, so like I said, I put my first vegetable seed in the ground in 2014, and so last year, when I had the community gardens, I used like a tiller to till the soil, and last year was the first year that I really started examining, how important the soil was and learning about that. So I'm still trying to dial that thing down. I use organic methods. I don't use chemicals, anything like that. But in terms of figuring out machinery versus natural application of things, it's a process for me. I think I lean more towards the natural process of things, but I also have to be mindful of the goals that I have and how those buttress up against those to build like this business model that has these organic practices, yet sustainable as well. So, so I'm examining that just moving forward.
Okay, so quickly, just one of two. I don't want everyone to respond to this one. How can policy help you? Either policy on the municipal level or the Farm Bill?
I mean, the cities could do well to just go ahead and finalize paperwork that has been lingering with city council and thing for years. Like, are they ever going to pass the animal ordinance, or are we, still going to have to try to hide our chickens or something? They can just go ahead.
This is being recorded, by the way, just so you know.
The other thing, Olivia's always said, in Detroit, there's enough for everyone to be able to have land and do some of the projects that they want to do.
Right. If you look on our website, brothernatureproduce.com, I've written up about 7 things that the city or other cities could do to support urban farming and farming in general. That goes into greater detail since we're supposed to be.
Okay, thank you. So before we open it up to the audience, I just want to get either thumbs up or thumbs down about this new format. How are you feeling about this? Great. Everyone seems to like it. Okay, so we'll take that into account as we're planning. Hopefully, we'll do this again next year. Hopefully, if we get the funding. So we want to open it up to the audience, and we have Mariah and Fern who are going to be circulating with microphones. And if you'd like to raise a question to our panelists, and Melvin will be right back, just raise your hand, and either Fern or Mariah will bring the mic to you. And we have one right here.
There's more seashells in here.
Would you mind standing also when you ask your question? And in your case, please introduce yourself.
Oh, God.
My name is Naeem Kenyatta Edwards. So I was hoping Melvin would come back too, but you guys have stated that there's multiple financial obstacles and we live in a system of capitalism, yada, yada, yada. I was curious if you could kind of envision your ideal farm business model. How many people are working? Are you growing? What are you producing? With the value added part, with the food cart or the like, what's the whole picture, and how is it like profitable or helping you guys sustain yourselves?
And try to answer that in like 1 minute.
All right. So our current business model would work well if we could find a full-time farm manager, because we have work all season around. We diversified our income well enough that we work all year round. We plow snow and stuff like that. So if we could find a farm manager to kind of run the things we've already started in Detroit. Besides the food trailer, we aren't going to do anything new. That way we can spend more time and develop the land and the country. So one full-time person and maybe like 2 or 3 seasonal workers for harvesting.
And if there's a way, like what we do with the compost is harvesting all of this waste, whether it's like yard waste, even occasional manure and tree waste and all kinds of stuff. We make amazing compost out of that. If there was a way to do more of that with animals too, because a lot of the food at Eastern Market is just it's getting trucked out into landfills, but like chickens will, convert all of that to eggs and compost and amazing things. So we have to find, a solution and rewrite some ordinances and just be able to like pilot some new things. And I mean, we're busy with our farm, with her. We don't have time to, wrestle with the city to do that. But ideally, it would be nice to see, that would be my ideal, to be able to take a lot of the waste and process it properly so it's not getting thrown out and all that.
Stefanie?
Sure. Yeah, for me, I would love to have staff help me with the value added, because the problem I get into is that I'm the only person doing everything, growing everything from seed, harvesting, weeding. I'm just kidding. I stopped weeding about a month in usually. Because again, I don't have time to pay myself to do that. And if it's not impacting the harvest, sorry, that's real. But that would be really helpful. Another person to harvest would also be helpful. But I guess maybe I'll weave this into the policy question too. It would be really great if we had a more inclusive bill of things that you could produce at home for sale. The cottage food bill is helpful in some regards, but it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. And I know there's other states like Maine that just passed food sovereignty. So that would actually help me to be able to raise enough income so that I could employ more people. So it would be then more sustainable.
So Melvin, while you stepped out, this dude right here, Naeem Kenyatta Edwards, asked a very complex question, but I'm going to try to simplify it. About ideally, what is your business model? How many people would you like to see employed?
So thanks for the question. So in a simplified way, my business model, currently We the People Growers Association is a LLC, but in the process of acquiring that elementary school, part of We the People will have to become a 501(c), simply because of nothing else but tax purposes on that land and the property surrounding. But the business model also is, I want to structure it where it's more farm to table, where, like I mentioned, is straight from the farm, straight to the restaurant, or straight to Argus Farm Stop, places like that. And as We the People builds itself out, I would like to see a presence at having a presence at the farmers market. Some of our employers working there at the farm stand and learning about retail and sales and all of those things there.
How
God, I
many
just hit a blank
employees?
spot.
How many employees ideally?
Yeah, thank
would
you.
like?
Ideally, 5 years from now, in my 2020 We the People Growers Association vision, I see employing 10 to 15, like I mentioned, 10 to 15 men and women who have returned home from incarceration. But like I say, I'll preface that with, I don't know how the hell I'm going to be able to do that, right? You know, with, as Stefanie mentioned, you know, like the just that cost of wages and all those things involved in the price points that farmers actually are able to work with.
So while folks are formulating the next question, Stefanie and Melvin, do you know Jean Cunningham right there, who's also a farmer in Ypsilanti?
I do not.
Okay, y'all need to know her. Y'all need to
All
meet.
right.
Okay.
Really familiar.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks so much for your presentation. So I have a question that relates to things that all of you have said, and that's about compensation for your food. I think it's really important for the future of small-scale farmers like yourselves for the public to value the work and the quality of your food. I'm wondering, have you seen that conversation change over the years that you've been working? Do you sense that we're going in the right direction in terms of customers understanding the many different aspects of the value of your food, of the food that you're growing?
I get a lot of people at the farmer's market who say, oh, I tried to grow arugula and I just can't, so I'm back. And whatever you say, well, I will charge, like you should be charging more for this because I couldn't keep it alive and it bolted right away. And so when people grow their own, then, and as more people do get back into gardening, not just, you know, 5 geraniums in an ocean of redwood chips, but actually growing food and things, they come to appreciate the farm products more.
But she still does occasionally snap at customers. I've actually heard her say, what did you said?
No, don't say it.
She said to this one woman, like, look, this isn't grown by slaves.
Yeah.
She said that, and so, I mean, we've just kind of gotten over having that stereotypical customer service experience at our table. Like sometimes you're gonna get snapped at if you come to our table. It's just how things are.
He's cute though.
I want to problematize that a little bit more, and I would say that sometimes the pricing is because farmers themselves are their own worst enemies and are lowballing themselves on price so that it does not help people's perception of what things should be. Yeah. And that might be, you know, you have many reasons for it. It might be you have too many radishes or something, and you in your mind think, oh, I just need to unload this, not realizing the ripple effect it's going to have on all those other growers trying to make a living. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay, my name is Scott Hucker, and by the way, the value thing goes back to growing seeds as well.
Sure.
It takes all the way more labor. But my question covers land, since it hit everyone. I'd like to know, essentially, what's the cost to buy or lease an acre of land in Corktown or Ypsi or Washtenaw to get a sense of scale of what holds you back?
Well, the city the city doesn't know how much they want to charge for the land. There's houses in our neighborhood that are only valued at $10,000, but then you'll be told that a lot is worth $20,000. How can an empty lot be worth more than an existing livable house? So the city has no idea. They don't know.
And that's just a lot. He asked about an acre.
Yeah,
right?
that's
So that's
a
just
lot.
one.
Near Port Huron, what we ended up doing, we bought just under 7 acres for $34,000.
About $10,000 an
And
acre.
the price of farmland, especially in that part of the state, is significantly cheaper than out here.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed that much.
What is it per acre out there?
About $10,000 per acre to buy. I don't know how much it is to lease because farmers out there usually lease to other farmers they know. And good luck like getting a hold of one to ask them a question. Because farmers out there have they have farmland by like thousands of acres. So you never really see them.
Would you stand when you ask your question, please?
Sorry. My name is Rio, and I was interested in engagement for you guys. I was wondering, are there any like tours or open houses or master classes for people who, like myself, are inexperienced but are interested in learning?
Sure.
Tell them about Fridays.
Fridays are harvest days, and we also have stuff for sale out there. And a lot of people come by and harvest with us and then take home whatever we have growing on the farm, because even though we specialize in salad mix, we always have other stuff. My recent obsession, beans, all kinds of beans.
We have the time.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good time, Fridays during the growing season. We'll put something up on our website.
We'll
Les-
probably be helping out Melvin, so.
And
Over his new farm.
I'll be a better person for it, so thank you. So I started a couple of years ago with something called Helping Hands Saturday, and where it's an opportunity for people intentionally to come out on that day and lend a hand if they like. Now, when We the People Growers Association is able to dial this proposal in and take possession of this building, and once that gets built out, I envision having a lot of classes and workshops and some very radical, intentional learning opportunities that center around just kind of like what you talked about, or what you're asking about in terms of growing and learning and educational things. One of the things I want to do in 2019 or 2020 is partner up with someone like University of Michigan, a sustainable food system, and also perhaps Michigan State University extensions program, and create like an agribusiness certification curriculum where maybe the employees or people coming through the Ypsilanti Community School, or people in general, can participate in this learning experience that can accumulate into a certification, which could possibly springboard into a degree at either the U of M or Michigan State University, which could lead into a career moving forward. So currently don't have those educational opportunities and tours and stuff available now, but certainly in the future. Yeah.
Please stand. Don't you do catering or something like that in Detroit?
I do. I'm a vegan chef and caterer. My name is Bianca Danzy. Please take out your phone and go follow me on Real Food by Bianca on Instagram and Facebook. Greetings, panel. I just have a question. In your dream scenario, especially you, Stefanie, I'm really interested to hear your opinion, even though everybody's is valuable. Where else can you see agriculture going outside of selling directly to, what restaurant wants to take your produce now, and, what the neighbors who love, your salad mix and those folks. Like, where else in the construct that we're all forced to live in currently with the capitalistic structure, where else do you see the food going? Like, is it value-added product, or, where else can it go when we start talking about the educational aspects and all of those things?
Try to answer that in 1 minute, please.
Okay. I think you're right. I think the value added is a big thing. But one of the sort of magic bullet ways around a lot of the legislation for that is pop-up, whether that's a food trailer or whether that's just jumping on probably what you're already doing. In my view, that's where the next wave is. There's a lot of people that are trying to push people into institutional buying, and that's great, but again, that comes up against this problem of the downward price pressures that people are gonna do. And plus, if you're gonna sell to that institution, you need a pretty high volume, or you need to be able to come together with a bunch of people. And yeah, at the state level, there's a lot of policy supporting that. But me, myself, I don't think that's really feasible for a lot of small scale growers, and I think it's better to partner up almost directly with the restaurant. And in my case, we didn't quite get it to happen at Ollie and Ipsy this year, but our plan was for me to come in their kitchen, make a special hot sauce there, so then they could also value added that as part of their thing and also showcase producers that way. So just figuring out creative ways to partner within, and it's not just restaurants, it could be venues, It could be all sorts of alternative spaces where you want to see food. So that's what I would.
And
I
there's
would
an
like to see.
amazing, sorry,
No,
there's
no,
an
go
amazing
ahead.
one when it's warm out, usually around like late April to early November, called the Pink Flamingo. It's right down the street from our farm, an ex-farmhand of ours. We helped her get the start, and her name's Mako, and she does a really amazing menu every week with stuff from us and probably stuff from like 4, 5, or 6 other farms. There's always something gluten-free, there's always something vegan, and it takes place in a community garden, and you can't get any localer than that.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left, and so in 1 minute each, I wonder if, so farming is really hard work. So how do you balance out this hard work with self-care, and also in that 1 minute, whatever closing remarks you'd like to make?
Oh, self-care. Yeah. You know, I find that listening to YouTubers who maybe not about urban farming, but you really need the motivation to actually do it. Like, people know what they need to do for themselves to keep themselves healthy, but they just don't do it because they feel like they don't have enough time, or, you know, the chickens got out, where's the dog? The dog's across the street. Watson, get over here. But listening to people regularly tell you, you know, take the time, take care of yourself really helps with that.
Greg?
Yeah.
I mean, during the growing season, just being out in the fields a lot is, you know, and I was a teacher for 15 years, so it's like this is, to me, like living free, you know. And part of our self-care or whatever is, she's got us on this path to be off the grid. So right now we're heating our house with wood. We have a wood boiler and a wood cook stove, so we're kind of like borrowing all these Mennonite technologies. And so, and that's extremely exciting. Where we're going is, you know, we're going to be freer and more independent in the near future. But in the immediate, like, I mean, if I didn't have ice hockey twice a week, I'd be locked up or something. Because it's very stressful. Like what we're doing, like renovating a house and managing an Airbnb, because Brother Nature has an Airbnb as well. And I mean, it's stressful. So I have like my own time to just let loose.
Goon out.
Stefanie?
She's like, that's
I'm
weird.
still trying to process that. No, just kidding. It's more that I just don't know if I do a good job of this myself, especially in the summer when you're like, oh, it's still light out. I still got a couple minutes to harvest. So then you get home and it's like 10:30, and then you need to start cooking. It's just really easy to get off. But I think what you were saying too is really important to just appreciate the time you do get to be outside. And that's something that a lot of people don't have the privilege to do, and just sort of appreciate that for what it is what I try to do. Just talk to my plants.
I don't know a lot about self-care. I don't know. You know, like this year was like really my first year of like really getting into farming, and I've just, you know, scratched the surface. You know, so I mean, I got up early in the morning, and you wind up and I'm home, and it's 10:30 at night, and I've still got to eat, and I've still got to bathe, and I've still got to sleep, and I've still got to. I've gotten into this thing with Facebook, and I've got to post this stuff, and you know, and it's I don't know. It's interesting. I'm just kind of like playing it by ear, and I stay connected to people. You know, and they help me in terms, just that human connection, you know, kind of helps me and grounds me and things like that. And I just got a new puppy, I'm pretty excited about.
That's self-care.
That is self-care, right? Please go to my Facebook page, We the People Growers Association. There's some wonderful pictures of her on there. Her name is Adisto. I call her Edie for short. And there's some self-care,
A melon.
which is actually a melon, and it's also a lake in a town in South Carolina, named after the Edisto people, who were a sub-tribe of the Cusacon Indians. And I didn't name her that. That was her name when I adopted her from the Humane Society.
You got 10 seconds, by the way.
And lucky for her, because I was just going to simply name her Farm Dog. So it's a good thing she came with her name. Much more interesting.
Please give our panelists a hand.
Anyway.